Your news starts now.
Good evening. We are watching Hurricane Matthew as it barrels its way toward Florida's Treasure and Space Coast. With the latest coming up, I'm Al Lewis. That is our top story. Let's get a check on traffic. Reno Grant is done for the day. We gave him a reprieve. Richard Lewis is here with the latest from Miami's Magic City Casino Traffic Center.
That's right. Still going to be a blustery ride. And if you have to be on the highway at all, keep both hands on the wheel. Now, I was on the turnpike about 30 minutes ago, and I did stay in my lane. There was some standing water, but the wind was not too bad. Now, we do have a hit and run reported in Miami-Dade County. You'll find that on Bird Road, headed eastbound at Southwest 94th Avenue. Your next traffic update, 10 o'clock. I'm Richard Lewis, News Radio 610 WIOD.
And Hurricane Matthew still a Category 4 storm. Winds are at 130 miles an hour. It is traveling toward the north and northwest, and it's about 13 mile an hour the speed there. We have the latest advisory, 8 p.m. The next one comes out at 11. We will pass that along to you as soon as we get it. It is 9:31. And here is the latest on Hurricane Matthew. What we know now, Florida is bracing for the impact. The storm was last reported 75 miles away from Florida's coast, approaching slowly at 13 miles per hour. Matthew now isn't expected to make landfall in Florida, but parts of the Sunshine State can expect to see heavy rain as well as powerful hurricane-force winds and flooding. The hurricane warning is in effect from Boca Raton on up north, south of Boca, from Boca down south toward Golden Beach. That is where the hurricane warning has now been downgraded to a tropical storm warning. We can expect heavy rain as well as those winds. Evacuation orders are in place along the Florida coast, but for many, possibly too late to get out of the storm's path if they haven't done so already. Evacuations also happening in Georgia and South Carolina in anticipation of Matthew's impact. Travelers are already feeling the impacts of Hurricane Matthew as thousands of flights have been canceled through Saturday because of the storm. Most of those canceled flights are into and out of Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and Orlando airports. Matthew has already had devastating effects for the Caribbean. The coordinator for Haiti's Interior Ministry in the area hardest hit by Hurricane Matthew says the confirmed death toll has risen dramatically to 283. Officials expect that toll to rise even further as authorities reach remote places that were left isolated by the storm. Bodies have started to appear as the waters recede in some areas 2 days after Matthew smashed through concrete walls, flattened palm trees, and tore roofs off homes. Here closer to home, millions of people could be in the dark after Hurricane Matthew finishes with Florida. Dave McDermott of Florida Power and Light says they expect extensive damage to the power grid.
We're looking at as many as 2.5 million of our customers to be without power, and some of them, frankly, some areas are going to be experiencing extended outages.
McDermott explaining the wind is the biggest threat to the power grid since it often knocks down the trees and branches onto the power lines. That threat is very real with Hurricane Matthew, with the storm packing 130 mile per hour winds. Rain, flooding from this Category 4 storm is also a big concern. Florida Senator Bill Nelson says the state has some tough days and weeks ahead as it cleans up after Hurricane Matthew.
Now is going to come the tough part. Enduring the storm, cleaning up afterwards, and hopefully not dealing with a lot of fatalities.
Senator Nelson, not one to mince words. He warned the Category 4 storm could cause a number of deaths if people decide to ignore evacuation orders and ride out the storm. He points out that the storm surge alone could bring devastating flooding to some parts of our state. Mayor of West Palm Beach says those who haven't evacuated yet should hunker down.
Well, we've been telling people to shelter in place at this point. If you haven't left, it's probably not a good time to leave because we're starting to see the bands come in here and a lot of wind and rain.
Mayor Jerry Moyo says her city expects some flooding from the storm surge. The Category 4 storm expected to bring hurricane conditions to the state in just the coming hours. That means hurricane-force winds and heavy rain as well as a high storm surge that will flood those low-lying areas. That's the latest. Back to you, Fernand.
All right. Thank you, Al, for keeping us up to date, folks. A lot of stuff, a lot of moving pieces still happening. The most important piece of information that you need to know, especially those of you in South Florida, is even though the worst has passed by way of Hurricane Matthew, you need to stay inside, you need to stay indoors, and keep in your mind and in your thoughts the good people of Central and North Florida who are getting ready to deal with a hellish life-threatening nightmare if you believe and see the reports. And folks, we have got about 18 different Doppler maps. None of them look good. All of them ugly as it relates to what's coming central and northern Florida's way right now. Scotty, what are you looking at?
Yeah, well, right now I'm actually looking at the projection from NOAA, and right now they're showing that by 2 p.m. tomorrow, which is Friday, the hurricane's eye will either be making landfall or just off the coast, in the Jacksonville area in that northern part of the state. So again, if you're in the northern part of the state right now listening to us from down here in Miami, get ready. The storm, it's a big storm, as we've all seen. We've seen some of the destruction that it's done, not only in Haiti, but in parts of Cuba and into the Bahamas. We're waiting to see those images tomorrow morning from the Bahamas. But, get ready. Make sure that, you have the water, all the tips that we've been talking about for, us down here. Make sure you have water. Don't, fill your bathtub up with some water in case water does go out. You're able to flush your toilets. Make sure, you have plenty of water as your last chance. And, if you have neighbors that need some help, please, if you're secure and your house is secure, give help to your neighbors while you still can.
And the other thing, we can't preach it enough, and it's not just because we're in the business and it's what we do for a living, but folks, make sure if you're listening to us in different parts of our sunshine state of Florida and the hurricane hasn't gotten to you yet, find yourself a battery-operated radio. Find what is the station in your area that is giving the nonstop local coverage, because it could be your lifeline, particularly as power is almost guaranteed to go out somewheres along the coast as you look at this Category 4 monster, Matthew, making its way onshore, projected to hit tomorrow. And look at these wind speed, everybody. We're talking now barometric pressure at about 930, which is just remarkable. Still, the gusts up to 145 miles per hour with maximum winds at 135 miles per hour. This is a potentially destructive storm. It is going to do some real damage if it comes on shore, so make sure you are prepared. There is still time to do so in the northern parts of the state. And heck, if you have time, heed Governor Rick Scott's advice and get out of town. Peace on out if you've got time to do it, if you are still able to go. The clock is ticking and the hours are winding down. Pretty soon it'll be minutes and not hours left, folks. But you still have got, at least, Scotty, we're looking at the eye there, looking like still noon to 2 p.m. tomorrow before it gets up to Central Florida. Right now, the eye of the storm is directly due east of the Florida Peninsula, just north, it looks like, of Indian River County. It just seems to be right around that Palm Beach County, Indian River County area, but it's slowly but surely chugging its way north where you can find the eye of the storm. Yeah, and if you look at some of those feeder bands as they're wrapping around, they're already reaching, north towards Daytona, just south of Jacksonville. And it looks as it makes that rotation. Jacksonville's going to start seeing some of those rains within the next hour or so. Let's actually dip into our news partners or actually some of the coverage we're looking at here, talking about how this storm, it looked like the eye was kind of coming apart there, but it seems to be gathering back up again. Let's listen into this coverage as it describes the new movements of the hurricane.
Is going through an eye wall replacement cycle. A bigger eye right here might emerge from all this, choking off the inner one, which is already losing strength. Could be bad news for up the coast in Florida. We'll keep you up.
Yeah, that was you heard him there say it right there, folks. And at one point earlier in the evening, it looked like that eye was kind of coming apart, maybe disorganizing itself. But as the storm has picked up its intensity, you see that eye reconstituting itself. And right now, as you look at the forecast going into the Port St. Lucie, Vero Beach area by Friday at 3 a.m., which is just, believe it or not, 6 hours from now, you're looking again at 75 mile per hour, potentially even 85 mile per hour winds just north of West Palm Beach, Port St. Lucie, Vero Beach, where that eye of the storm is really tracking the Florida coastline along the southeast coast as it gets its way up into central and northeastern Florida, where you expect tomorrow the worst of the impact with sustained winds of 130 miles per hour as it reorganizes as a Category 4 hurricane. Still enough to do and bring about catastrophic damage in other parts of our sunshine state of Florida. Folks, if you got any reports, by the way, if any of you have anything you want to share with us, anything you're seeing either on the roadways, in your neighborhoods, if you are without power, you still have time to give us a call at 866-610-6397. We aren't going anywhere. We're going to be on the radio and broadcasting live all night long into the wee hours and into the day tomorrow with news on Hurricane Matthew. Scotty, you got an update on the current wind speed and direction based on the latest forecast models?
Yeah, this is coming out at 9:30, so just about 10 minutes ago. Miami International is reporting winds at 17 miles per hour, gusts 30 miles per hour. Up in West Palm Beach right now, staying about steady from when we checked about a half hour ago. 32 miles per hour, gusts up to 44 miles per hour. Vero Beach, 26 mile per hour with gusts up to 48, and already Jacksonville is registering 20 miles per hour in some areas. So, it's gonna progress as the night and the evening goes on into the next morning. Like you said, 2 a.m. It should be off around the coast of Melbourne, and by 2 p.m. tomorrow, Jacksonville should be feeling this, storm full, the full brunt of it.
I've driven up and down that Interstate 95 drive to Jacksonville. Like I said, I've got family up there. My father is up there now in St. Johns County, right outside of Duval County in Jacksonville. Aunts, uncles, brothers, and cousins. I'm a little worried about this as I see this storm just kind of making its way upward there. But thinking about all of those places, Titusville, Cape Canaveral, Melbourne, a lot of our most beautiful and vulnerable parts of our southeastern coast of the Florida Peninsula, just looking there so vulnerable as this massive Matthew storm approaches. Some folks were saying they're really worried about what may happen at Cape Canaveral, of course, where the Kennedy Space Center is located, amongst other things. Folks, we're going to go to a quick break. We're going to come back with more of your phone calls and more of the latest on Hurricane Matthew as Operation Stormwatch continues in full effect here at News Radio 610 WIOD.
Are you tired of exposing your retirement to stock market risk? Call 866-749-SAFE for your free Safe Money book, or join me, Rick Pertiera, for Safe Money Radio on Sundays at 4 p.m.
It's a construction reduction. Miami Lakes Auto Mall has over 1,000 new vehicles that must be sold. Our construction has limited our space, so we're discounting every vehicle in stock to make room. Now through Sunday at Miami Lakes Auto Mall during the Jeep Celebration event. Current competitive leasees can lease a brand new 2016 Jeep Grand Cherokee. Just $199 a month. Only $199 a month. Shop over 1,000 cars and trucks right now at MiamiLakesAutomall.com. Please take 6 months to pay down plus tax and tag with credit, no security deposit, includes all incentives, including leasing competitive conquest.
We are the Southeast Seafood Festival, delicious seafood creation. Between 7th and 9th on Ocean Drive. Come on and shop with us.
Need a vacation? Find your oasis at the South Beach Seafood Festival this October 22nd. Tickets are $10 off with promo code HEART and include full open bar. Huh? That's right, full open bar. Yeah! You'll explore seafood like never before, with 17 of Miami's top luxury restaurants serving up over 60 mouth-watering items. Tickets available for a limited time at SobeSeafoodFest.com. That's SobeSeafoodFest.com. This is an event you don't want to miss. Visit SobeSeafoodFest.com.
We are the Southeast Seafood Festival, delicious seafood creation. Between 7th and 9th on Ocean Drive. Come on and shop with us.
Now, your iHeartRadio new release rundown.
New in stores, 23-year-old country singer-songwriter William Michael Morgan releases his debut studio album, Vinyl, featuring his top 10 hit, I Met a Girl.
I met a girl, she made me smile, she made me wait. She crossed the street, she crossed my heart, she fixed her dress.
Influential alternative band The Pixies drops their second album of new material since their decade-long hiatus with Head Carrier. Tenement Song is the album's latest single. And legendary singer-songwriter Eric Clapton's 13th live album, Live in San Diego, hit stores just 4 months after his latest studio album, I Still Do.
Hey, love, got me on my knees
this week's iHeartRadio New Release Rundown.
And now, the iHeartRadio Weekend Sports Time Capsule.
Come on, let's take a trip back in time to this week in sports history. Starting way back in 1895 when the first U.S. Open golf tournament is held in Newport, Rhode Island. In 1921, the Baseball World Series is broadcast on the radio for the first time. 1956, Don Larson pitches the only perfect game in World Series history as the Yankees beat the Brooklyn Dodgers 2-0 at Yankee Stadium in the fifth game of the series. And this week in 1984, the 104th Men's U.S. Open Final is held. John McEnroe beats Ivan Lendl in straight sets.
That's your iHeartRadio Weekend Sports Time Capsule.
And now a look back at This Week in History.
This week in 1866, the Reno Gang carried off the first robbery of a moving train in the U.S. They made off with about $10,000. The four Reno brothers, Frank, Simeon, William, and John, would pull off train robberies for another 2 years before being caught. The Great Chicago Fire began this week in 1871. Over 250 people died and more than 17,000 buildings were destroyed. This week in 1985, Palestinian terrorists hijacked the Achille Lauro, an Italian cruise ship carrying 440 passengers off the coast of Egypt. The gunmen demanded the release of 50 Palestinian militants imprisoned in Israel, and if their demands weren't met, they threatened to blow up the ship and kill 11 Americans that were on board. Two thugs attacked CBS Evening News anchor Dan Rather this week in 1986, yelling, "Kenneth, what's the frequency?" REM would later write a song called What's the Frequency, Kenneth, for their 1994 album Monster. And this week in 2003, actor Arnold Schwarzenegger was elected governor of California, replacing Gray Davis, who had earlier become the first U.S. governor to be recalled since 1921.
That's your look back at This Week in History. And now a look back at This Week in History.
This week in 1888, the Washington Monument was opened to the public, a towering tribute to America's first president. It took a century to plan and build and wasn't completed until our nation's 21st president, Chester Arthur, was in office. Egypt and Syria launched a surprise attack against Israel on the Jewish holy day of Yom Kippur this week in 1973. This week in 1952, Bandstand made its debut. The show, which would eventually be hosted by Dick Clark, went national on ABC 5 years later. Now, in the show's early days, kids would rush home from school to catch the latest music, fashion, and dance trends. The show aired live at 3:30 in the afternoon, 5 days a week. Pope Paul VI visited New York City this week in 1965, marking the first visit to the Western Hemisphere by a sitting pope in history. This week in 1990, East and West Germany unified 45 years after being split into two countries at the end of World War II, and Roy Horn of Siegfried and Roy was attacked by one of their show's tigers in Las Vegas this week in 2003.
That's your look back at This Week in History.
How young is too young for a child to pick up a digital device? A new study suggests kids don't start learning from gadgets until they hit preschool age. Researchers at Boston University Medical Center say potential educational benefits for kids under 2 are unproven, and it's well known that infants and toddlers learn best through face-to-face experiences. They conclude that while mobile devices used by children can provide educational benefits, using them to distract young children may be detrimental to their development.
And now, the iHeartRadio Weekend Sports Time Capsule.
Hello, sports fans. It's me, Bald Freak Ronnie, here to take you on a trip back in time to this week in sports history. Starting in 1953, when the 50th World Series is played, the Yankees beat the Dodgers 4-2 to win their 5th consecutive World Series. The Yankees' Billy Martin gets 12 hits in the series, setting a record. In 1974, Frank Robinson is named the first African-American manager in Major League Baseball. In 1984, Walter Payton passes Jim Brown as the all-time NFL leader in rushing yardage with 12,400 yards. 1996, Tiger Woods wins his first professional tournament, the Las Vegas Invitational. And this week in 2001, 41-year-old Baltimore Oriole Cal Ripken Jr. plays his 3,001st and final game at Baltimore's Camden Yards.
That's your iHeartRadio Weekend Sports Time Capsule. Before, during, and after Matthew, stay informed on News Radio 610 WIOD and Operation Stormwatch.
Ronnie back on News Radio 610 WIOD as we continue Operation Stormwatch into the wee hours. We're about to pass the baton on to Ryan Gorman. But folks, if there's anybody of you out there that is saying, well, you know what, this wasn't as bad as advertised, this storm wasn't quite as severe as they made it out to be or threatened it to be, listen to this, especially those of you that have grown up in the South. All Waffle House restaurants on I-95 between Titusville and Fort Pierce are closed. And Scotty, it's almost like a meme or a cliche. If Waffle House is closed, it's a sign that it's about to get real, because that is the last place to go and the first to open. You know that if the word has come down for Waffle House to shut it down, it means that storm is a big, bad wolf.
Well, I know we're making it a joking matter, but you're absolutely right about that. I mean, that along with Publix shutting down, which is a staple of all Florida, which they shut down earlier this afternoon. The South Florida areas at 2 p.m. and also Walmart was shut down today. So those are things that are usually 24 hours are always there for you. And when you see those shut down, it's time to kind of just not take your chances, especially out on these roads. Just stay inside, enjoy the family, listening to us. Maybe if you still have cable and TV, watch the TV a little bit, but just stay inside.
That was the question I was waiting. I said, well, it will be a Waffle House open. And FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Authority, has kind of what's known as an informal Waffle House index. And what that means is they kind of judge the severity of a storm, believe it or not, by whether or not Waffle House has made the decision to shut it down or keep it open. And the fact that they've said between Fort Pierce and Titusville, we are no longer 24/7. There are no scattered, smothered, covered in double chunk coming your way, or no waffles lightly toasted or crispy well done. That means that this storm is real, folks, and you need to be safe and you need to be prepared. And since we are all being broadcast throughout the state of Florida, we want you to take all of the necessary precautions, including having enough food and water. You are likely to be without power if you live anywhere along that northeastern Florida coastline as the storm makes its way tantalizingly close. And it looks like almost right now, Scotty, based on the latest forecasting model, it looks like a land strike is absolutely going to happen. We'll keep an eye on that. We'll keep monitoring that as these updates continue. But right now, based on the most recent forecasting model, I actually seen, I'm looking at it right now on the screen, and it looks like it's making contact with land here in Florida as this thing progresses throughout the evening and into tomorrow.
Yeah, and right now the eye is due east of Jupiter, which is the northern part of Palm Beach County. So, looking at some of these feeder bands whipping around, some of these heavier rains and winds are hitting areas like Fort Pierce, Stewart, into Jupiter, and even as far south right now as Boca. You're seeing some winds, and gusts hitting up 50 miles per hour. So,
and you're starting to get a sense of the scope and the numbers. Right now, there are 11.2 million Floridians in a hurricane warning area, and authorities are saying right now 2.5 million, 2.5 million Floridians can expect to be without power once Matthew finishes his business on this first go around in Florida. So again, folks, if you are in central or northern Florida, before this thing gets really, really, really crucial, which is going to happen in a matter of hours, make sure you're stocked up on food, on batteries, have your transistor radio, have your predetermined safe spot wherever it is you're riding out the storm. If you have chose to ride it out, and if you've gotten out of Dodge, good for you. That looks like the right move now, as this storm absolutely seems poised to make landfall somewhere along the central and northeastern coastline of the state of Florida.
Yeah, and just, kind of looking at this map and, people that are in the northern part of the state right now that are thinking that, well, maybe we'll get off light and, maybe it won't hit us like South Florida. Just look at the destruction that it did to Haiti and Bahamas, like we were mentioning before. It's not something to play with. Just because we got a little bit luckier on the southern end of the state, you can't take that chance in the northern part of the state. So make sure that all your shutters are on, correctly and securely. Or if you have wood, make sure that wood is on securely while you still have that chance.
And it's especially vulnerable because, as we said, northern Florida, while they've experienced hurricanes, they haven't had quite the frequency, Scotty, that we've tended to see down here. So folks may be either complacent or ignorant or both about what to do. And we know one of the most important things you can do down here, in addition to doing all the prep work, is making sure wherever you're staying on the perimeter of the property, having all of those objects that are not absolutely tied down and anchored down, get those inside, because once those hurricane force winds get a hold of that, those become flying projectiles. And then the other aspect of hurricanes that you've got to be mindful of is what's called the storm surge. And even in southern Florida, in Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach, storm surge was only expected to be between 1 and 3 feet. Listen to the storm surge projections between Melbourne all the way up through Jacksonville and into Savannah and Charleston. You're looking at anywhere between 7 and 11 feet of storm surge. Folks, that is life-threatening conditions. That is life-threatening storm surge. And as I said right now, this is a Category 4 monster in Hurricane Matthew. 11.2 million people in Florida right now as we speak under hurricane warning, and an anticipated 2.5 million Floridians expected to be without power. So folks, keep that in mind when you call FPL to get your power back. There's going to be folks that are likely to be without power in some parts of our state for days and weeks. And I remember the last time we had a Category 4 or 5 hit Florida, we saw some places even go months without power, given some of the damage that was done to the infrastructure in that part of the state, folks. So make sure you're mindful of all this. We've got one more hour till the next update from the National Hurricane Center, and Ryan Gorman is going to be giving you that live here on News Radio 610 WIOD. We aren't going anywhere, folks. We are going to stand tall before, during, and after Matthew. We've been doing this for almost 100 years here on News Radio 610 WIOD. We'll do it for 100 more, but one of the best things you can do is stay locked in and stay tuned in to News Radio 610 WIOD. Scotty, I know you're planning on headed back. I want you to make sure you give reports as you head northbound into the Palm Beaches back here to News Radio 610 WIOD. We'll do the same as we head south to Miami on the roadways of South Florida.
Yeah, and definitely we'll be checking back in and making sure everybody stays safe. And if you have to, if you're able to stay off the roads, especially in South Florida, please stay off the roads. And in the northern part of the state, like we've been mentioning, storm's not at full power yet, but it's getting there. So make all your trips now and then get to a safe place.
I was just talking to my father in between the break, and I was asking him, what's it like? Why don't you just see if you can get out of the Jacksonville area? And apparently the roadways are just crazy insane. So a lot of folks are saying, I don't want to be stuck on the highway. I'd rather just stay home. So ride it out safe and sound. I want to spend a special message to my family up there in the St. Johns County, Jacksonville area. Stay tight, everybody. Be careful and be ever vigilant. This one is nasty and it's coming your way, but don't forget that no matter what happens here on News Radio 610 WIOD and on Operation Stormwatch, we're going to be live and local all day long, all night long, all weekend long, if it's necessary, until we say
bye-bye, Hurricane Matthew.
Talk to you tomorrow, folks.
Everyone in our state must prepare now for a direct hit.
Prepare.
Hurricane Matthew.
Be prepared.
Make sure they have their hurricane supplies now.
Food.
Buying some extra food.
Water.
Restock your supplies.
And of course,
batteries and the radios.
Fresh batteries for that radio.
Have a radio on.
Prepare for the storm.
Be prepared.
Because if the power goes out,
knowledge is power. If you don't stay informed, you don't have any power.
You'll need us.
1,000 homes without power.
News Radio 610 WIOD.